Hey folks, welcome back. My name is Kyle Grossmiller, and this is part 2 out of 4 parts where we're going to demo using SmartConfig and VMware Cloud Foundation with FlashStack to automate many of your day 0 and day 1 deployment things. So with part 2, we're going to dive pretty deeply into what's required in the SmartConfig deployment phase to bring your FlashStack online. So in this phase, we're going to basically do a couple of customizations that are required for Cloud Foundation, and we will end with FlashArray being zoned, set up for boot from SAN, so that we can then automatically install ESXi under all underlying hosts. Where we left off in part 1 was part 3, our device initialization phase. That has now completed. And now what we can do is actually go into the deployment advanced mode. You don't generally have to do this, but because we are using VMware Cloud Foundation, there are a couple of things that are required in our lab. What we'll show here is basically disabling spanning tree because we're not using that in our lab for this setup. So I'm going to go ahead and disable that here under the advanced menu. And really what this deployment phase is doing is giving us the opportunity to set up this configuration as required for Cloud Foundation. The other thing that we're going to do here is we're going to add a couple of additional VLANs to our port channel so that everything can communicate to each other as well as to the upstream switch and out to the overall network. So that's all we're doing here is we're just adding vMotion VLAN. This was again specified in our configuration phase of the deployment. And then we're going to add a couple of additional VLANs as well, one of them being our native VLAN, and then the other one is an application VLAN, aka which will be used for VMware vSAN. I mentioned this in the previous section, but one of the really nice things about SmartConfig is you only have to do all of this stuff once. I'll show at the end, we do have the capability to export all of these customizations to a JSON file and then use that for subsequent deployments once we've got everything set up. So if you're a partner out there and you've got a bunch of different FlashStacks that you're imaging and shipping off to a customer site, again, chances are you hopefully only have to do this once, and then you can alter the JSON as required. I've skipped ahead there just to add those VLANs to the Nexus switch zoning and port channel setup. We'll then play this particular deployment option. I'll pause it here because this does take a few minutes to run through. And then as we can see, it automatically completes, gives us some good deployment logging. MDS, we do not require any sort of specialized setup for VMware Cloud Foundation. So we'll just go ahead and play that one as is and set up our virtual SANs on MDS. And then we'll pause it again here. Again, these things do take a little bit of time, but for the sake of brevity, I'm going to keep moving forward. So in this phase, we're going to set up our UCS Fabric interconnects. We do need to change our management VNICs to allow those 3 VLANs I mentioned earlier, namely management, vMotion, and vSAN. So a requirement of Cloud Foundation is that when it builds that distributed switch, all of those VLANs need to be on VNIC 0 and VNIC 1. So what we're doing within SmartConfig right here is we're just adding those additional VLANs to that management VNIC template. Super straightforward and easy. You just select, the VLANs that you want to add here, and then we'll go ahead and repeat that on management VNIC template B. So we'll go to the advanced menu. It's a simple pull down, and then we just select the additional 2 VLANs in addition to our native and management VLANs here. Great. So those have been altered. We now go back, and then we go ahead and kick off the UCS deployment. So this is going to build our service profiles for UCS, acknowledge the chassis, and apply those service profiles. Now we'll set up FC SAN zoning on our Pure Storage FlashArray. And then the last step is to actually configure Pure Storage as a boot from SAN target. And in this case, it also does create a shared volume. The default value here was only 10 gigs. So I'm going to change not only the size of the volume, but also the name, because later I will want to provision a VMware Cloud Foundation workload domain to it. Then we go ahead and click play. Our FlashStack deployment is now done. And as I mentioned earlier, now we can export that JSON file. And here we can see every configuration, every deployment option that we've made that was customized for that deployment is now available for reuse. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and please check out part 3 next.